Hi friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Bianca and today we're going to do a reading wrap up. Before I start the video, I just want to say happy Easter to anyone who's celebrating. I know when this video comes out, Easter's over, but I'm filming this on Easter, so I just want to throw it in there. Happy Easter if you're celebrating. But it's April right now, we're about a third through the year, so I thought it was about time to wrap up what books I've been reading. Before I start, I'm going to go through a couple of stats. I've been using Fable to track my reading a lot this year, so I got all these stats from that. Oh my god, hella people are literally outside of my house right now. They can totally see in my window. Okay, we survive. So far this year I've read 8 romances, 8 thrillers, 3 fantasies, and 3 thriller romances. My average rating has been 3.6 stars, and my most read author is Freida McFadden. I've read 4 of her books. I have a lot to talk about, so let's just start yapping. I'm already sweating. Unwell. The first book I read this year was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I decided to go into this series because I loved ACOTAR, as most people do, and one of my friends told me that Throne of Glass was really good, so I was like, ACOTAR's good, my friends are saying Throne of Glass is good, so let's start it. But I didn't really see the appeal. My friend told me that I need to keep reading and just take in the series as a whole and not stop reading from this one book, but I don't know guys, I don't know. As far as the plot goes, bear with me with these names because it's a fantasy book. I don't know how to say any of the things they're saying in here, but Selena Sardothian is a notorious assassin in Adarlan. She's in this prison salt mine. We don't really know why. The crown prince of Adarlan, Dorian, comes to the salt mine, and in exchange for her freedom, he wants her to compete in this competition where she'll become the king's champion. So in the book, she's going through this competition and all these different trials, and while that's happening, there's also an evil thing happening within the castle that she's trying to figure out. And then there's also a love triangle aspect, which I personally didn't love, but that's there if you like that. Overall, I wish that the book focused more on the competition and the trials aspect, kind of like how the first book of ACOTAR did. That's what I was expecting. It was a lot more about the evil stuff going on and just character and world building, so I wasn't totally intrigued, and we honestly didn't get many answers by the end of the book, which makes sense because it is a really long series, so I'm sure if I keep reading it then more answers will come out, but I just felt like by the end of this book we're still where we started. A quote that really stuck out to me from this book: names are not important, it's what lies inside of you that matters. The second book I read was All I Want by Darcey Bell, and what originally drew me to this book is that it's based in upstate New York. I'm from upstate New York, so I was like, a thriller based in upstate New York, that's made for me. And I actually loved the plot of this book. I was eating it up. I thought it was going to be 4 or 5 stars until the ending. So our 2 main characters are Ben and Emma, and right now they live in New York City. Emma's pregnant, so they're trying to get a house outside of the city just because they want that environment to raise their family in, and Ben falls in love with this old Victorian mansion fixer-upper. Even though it's a lot of work, Ben swears it'll be perfect for them. Emma's kind of hesitant because she's like, I'm pregnant, we don't have time for a fixer-upper, but she sees how happy it makes Ben, so they go for it. Ben spends a lot of time in the city with his job, and Emma is basically staying at the house by herself a lot of the time, and weird things start happening to her, but Ben is the king of gaslighting, so he's all the time that's not happening, just gaslighting her into thinking that she's making all this up, basically. Like I said, I was loving this book for the majority of the time reading it. There were so many twists and turns I didn't see coming, and it almost ends great. There's basically an ending. The book is perfect, it's ended, and then there's one more chapter, and that last chapter ruins the whole thing. If I didn't read the last chapter, this book would have been 4 or 5 stars. I didn't have a quote written down for this book, but here's just a mood board that kind of encompasses the vibes and everything the book has to offer. So if you like this vibe, you'll like the book. I just recommend not reading the last chapter. Then I read the first 3 books in the mindf series. I know, it's weird, I only read the first 3 books, and it's not that I didn't like the series. You guys will see as I talk about them. All my friends tell me it's weird that I don't sit and read the whole series through, but I don't know, I like to make it last as long as possible, so I don't read the whole series at once. First was The Risk. I've been wanting to read this for a while. I decided to invest in Kindle Unlimited this year, so when I saw this was on Kindle Unlimited, I immediately started reading. The main character of the book is Lana. She's a sort of vigilante. She's a serial killer who's killing off men who did something really bad to her in her past. I'm not going to reveal what that is just because I feel like that's a part that you should read in the book, but trust me, it's really bad. Not that you can ever justify killing someone, but they need some sort of justice. Should be by the legal system, but she just decides to take it into her own hands and kill them off one by one. The male main character is Logan, and he's an FBI profiler, so Criminal Minds vibes. But you can imagine when they meet each other and start, falling in love, it's a little complicated because she's a serial killer and he works for the FBI. FBI, and he actually is looking for her, and you'd think that he'd catch her right away, but the way that the book is written, the way that their relationship is developing, it makes sense like why he's not catching her. And like you are seeing how the case is developing on his side, and she's also very like meticulous. She has a different identity, like he doesn't know her real name. It's very complicated, but basically I'm trying to say, even though you'd think he'd like know right away because he works for the FBI, it's written in a way that like makes sense. The writing style feels kind of like Wattpad, but I ate it up anyway. These books are also really short. I think that if you buy like a paper copy, it comes with all the books in one volume, but I was obviously reading them one at a time, and they were super short. I want to say like between 100 150 pages for each book, but I would definitely recommend to check the trigger warnings before you read this, just because there's a lot of heavy stuff going on. A quote that stood out in this book for me: "Then why did you tell me?" she scolds. "Because I want you to be someone one day." The second book in the series is called Sidetracked. In this one, Logan is trying to catch a different killer. I think it's a serial killer too, and somehow Lana gets like wrapped into it, and she's basically put at risk, and Logan feels like so bad that he's like putting her at risk. As you're reading it, you're like, bro, she's a serial killer, like chill, she could take any of these guys. It's just like you're seeing he's freaking out about keeping her safe, but meanwhile she's killing people. I'd say this one was a little less interesting than the first book, but honestly they all mesh in my mind because I read them back to back to back, and they're all so short, so in my head they feel like one big book. But basically same as before, check trigger warnings. Just check the trigger warnings for this whole series. A quote that stood out to me from this book is, "It's often easier for someone to believe evil can't exist inside someone they love than to admit they've failed someone who should be more important." Then I read the third book in the series, which is called Scarlet Angel. I promise guys, we're almost out of this series. In this one, Lana is kind of fighting a battle within herself about loving Logan but not being able to show him every part of herself, and at the same time Logan is still working on the case of the people Lana is killing, and he's kind of getting closer to figuring out who it is, but he still doesn't suspect that it's Lana at all. At this point in the series, I was kind of like, okay, like I just want him to catch her and like find out what's gonna happen. Like, is he gonna forgive her? Like, what's going on? That's why I stopped after this book. I am gonna finish the series eventually. I do like it. I just was getting a little bored at this point, so I needed to take a break. Moving on to the next book, The Last Word by Taylor Adams, which I got from Book of the Month a while ago. The main character, her name's Emma. She is house sitting for this woman named Jules in Washington on the beach. So it's like this big house on the water. She's very isolated. It's just her and her dog Leica there. She loves reading horror novels, so one day she reads this horror novel online and she hates it, so she leaves a 1-star bad review, and the author actually responds to her review and they get in this huge fight online. Right after that, weird things start happening, so she starts to look into the author's past. There's also a lot to unpack in Emma's past too, so that adds a whole other layer to the book. Overall, I loved the whole premise of the book, like the idea of writing a bad review and that being the start of a thriller. I just thought that was so creative, and it was actually executed very well. Sometimes books have a really interesting premise and then I'm not satisfied with how it's written in the book. This one, the idea was amazing and it was executed great in the actual writing. There were so many plot twists. I did not guess the ending at all, which obviously is what you want in a thriller, so definitely recommend this one. A quote I really liked from this book: "Authors are chameleons, pretenders, posers." Then I read yet another thriller. Are we surprised? No. It was The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks. Wait, I think it's by 2 authors. Yeah, Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. So the 2 main characters, Marissa and Matthew, are a married couple and they're kind of having some trouble in their marriage, so they go to a therapist. Her name's Avery, but she's not a licensed therapist anymore. She was, but she lost her license because she has unorthodox practices. I don't want to give anything away about how she therapizes them. Is that a word? I don't know, but just know it's not normal. In the very beginning of the book, first time they go to Avery's office, Marissa reveals that she was unfaithful. The whole book is them working through that. It's told from Avery, the therapist, and Marissa, the wife's point of views. There are 3 parts, and at the end of each part, there's a plot twist. But low-key, the plot twists weren't that surprising. The whole time I was reading, I was like disappointed. Like, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, especially for a Book of the Month book. I feel like Book of the Month usually hits, especially with the thrillers I've gotten. A quote that I think summarizes summarizes this book perfectly is, sometimes we need to look at our lives from a different angle to recognize the dysfunction and damage certain relationships are causing. One of my housemates really likes Freida McFadden books, so when I was looking for a book to read, she told me to try out some of her books, and I read The Housemaid by her, but nothing else, so I wanted to get more of her books to try. The next book I read was Never Lie by Freida McFadden, and I finished this book in one day. If that doesn't tell you how much I liked it. Trisha and Ethan go to view a house in upstate New York. Again, when they're going to view the house, a snowstorm happens and traps them there. The house belonged to Adrian Hale, who was a psychiatrist that went missing a few years ago. And while Trisha is exploring the house, she discovers a secret room that has all these tapes of Avery talking to her patient. Adrian, not Avery. Oops. The book is told in past and present point of view. So in the present, it's in Trisha's point of view, and in the past, it's in Adrian's point of view. When I tell you, I was so caught off guard by the plot twists in this book. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget. I think it was the middle of the night. I was laying right here in this bed, reading on my Kindle, and I was like, and obviously when I was reading, I had a ton of theories. I thought I had this shit figured out. No, I did not. I didn't have any quotes highlighted from this book, but here is a little board with the vibes of it. So if this entices you, try out the book. The lighting's getting worse, but we're gonna try and persevere here. The next book I read was Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Sadly, I DNF'd this book. Let me tell you about the plot and then we'll talk about why I DNF'd. The book is about Rowan and Neil, who are seniors in high school. They've been rivals for all 4 years. I think they both run for like class council president, and they end up being like co-presidents, and what they both really want is to be valedictorian. Neil gets it. Not a spoiler. It's literally right in the beginning of the book. On the last day of school, for seniors, they get to do this scavenger hunt around Seattle. Rowan sees this as like her last chance to beat Neil at something. During the competition, they end up teaming up, and that's where I stopped reading. I know that this book is YA, but it was just so obvious that Neil liked her, and the whole time I was like, girl, it's right in front of you. How do you not see it? Another thing is that Rowan likes reading romance novels, and she wants to be a romance author in the future, but she's just like so embarrassed by it, and she doesn't want people to make fun of her, so she keeps this to herself, and that's like a huge part of the book. Like every chance she gets, she's bringing up how she can't tell anyone that she likes to read romance novels because they'll judge her. I just wanted to be like, girl, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares that deeply. I was just getting really bored and like fed up with the characters, so I DNF'd it. A quote that I felt really encompassed this book: I'll never understand why people are so quick to trash this one thing that's always been for women first. They won't let us have this one thing that isn't hurting anyone and makes us happy. Nope, if you like romance novels, you have zero taste or you're a lonely spinster. The next book I read was The Boyfriend by Freida McFadden. We've really been on our Freida kick this year. In this book, the female main character, Sydney, she's on this dating app called Cinch, and she goes on a date with this guy in the very beginning of the book, and it's terrible. It's ending badly. Some mystery man comes in and saves her, but then he leaves before she can find out like his name. Eventually, she runs into him again. We find out his name is Tom, and he's the male main character in this book. They really hit it off, they start dating, and Sydney thinks he's just perfect, like she couldn't ask for a better boyfriend. At the same time, some women in the city they live in, I think it's New York, women are being murdered. This book is also dual timeline and multiple POVs. So in the past, it's told in Tom's point of view, and in the present, it's told in Sydney's point of view. I don't want to give too much away, but this story was insane. Literally insane. Just like the other Freida book I read, I thought I had it all figured out, and I was completely wrong. Freida can just weave a story so seamlessly that when she reveals the ending, it makes perfect sense, but you like can't pick up on it throughout the whole book. I don't have a quote for this book, but here's a little mood board, and like I said before, if you like this vibe, you'll like this book. The next book I read was also by Queen Freida, and it was The Crash. This book actually came out in January of this year, so it was I think it's her newest release. The book starts with our main character, Tegan. She's 23 years old, she's pregnant, she's living alone, her apartment's kind of run down, no one really believes that she can take care of this baby, but she's working her butt off to save money, and you know, she's a baddie, she's a badass woman. She got pregnant from a one-night stand with this really rich man, and the man does not want to be involved. I'm pretty sure he's married. He's going to pay her off a bunch of money that will basically set up her and her child for the rest of their lives. So he comes over to her house, and she's gonna sign this contract, and when he comes over, she has this vivid memory that the night they spent together was not consensual. So trigger warning for anyone that might concern. She ends up not signing the papers. This is also not a spoiler. It's literally the first like 2 chapters, I want to say. She gets in her car and she starts driving to her brother's house, but it's during a huge snowstorm. So she gets in a crash. This man, Hank, saves her, and she's very skeptical because she's like, I'm pregnant. When she gets to the man's house, his wife Polly's there, and she explains like, the power's out, we can't call anyone, you're gonna have to stay the night here. So she stays the night and things start getting worse. While I like this book, it kind of fell short for me as a Freida McFadden book. Like you guys heard, I really loved the other 2 books I read by her this year, and this one kind of fell flat. The middle felt like it was dragging. Like in the middle I was like, okay, come on, something needs to happen here, and the ending didn't really do it for me. The plot twist just like wasn't satisfying. Here's the vibes though. If you like thrillers, you might like this. It just wasn't my favorite of hers. The Predator by RuNyx, I think is how you pronounce the author's name. I read this for a video. My friends picked my reads, so my friend Olivia picked this book for me. It was my first dark romance book I've ever read. The 2 main characters, Marana and Tristan, are from different sides of the mafia, and they hate each other to the point where Tristan is like, I'm the only person that gets to kill you. Marana had developed this set of codes. She's very like IT tech savvy, so she developed this set of codes that could be used to infiltrate the other side, but the codes are stolen, so they end up having to work together to try and figure out where these codes are and get them back. Going into this book, I was very skeptical. I'd never read about the mafia, I'd never read a dark romance, and I was like, if they want to kill each other, like how is this going to develop? Like how am I going to end up enjoying this? But I really enjoyed it. I really did. Am I a freak? Maybe. The chapters of this book were very long. I read it on my Kindle, so I could see that the chapters were like 20 to 30 minutes for my reading speed. That was intimidating. The middle also felt kind of slow. It kind of dragged, but overall, I really liked the book. By the end of the book, I was kicking my feet. I was screaming. I was like, finally, like just the satisfaction of something finally happening. I vividly remember this quote from the book. If voices could be drinks, his was a centuries-old vintage whiskey, rolling off the tongue, down the throat, leaving a trail of fire inside, making every cell in the body aware that it had been consumed. Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. Also read this for a video. My friend Victoria picked this one for me. I'm not gonna say too much about the plot. I feel like Queen Elsie Silver just like doesn't need explanation. Like she's perfect. The female main character is Skylar Stone. She's a famous singer, and she comes to Rose Hill to record a record with Ford, who was the male main character from the first book in the series. When she gets there, she meets Weston, who's Ford's best friend. She doesn't have a place to stay, and Ford is still building this like recording retreat, so it's not ready for her to stay in. So she ends up staying in this bunkhouse on Weston's, he's West in the book, so she stays in this bunkhouse on West's property. So they become friends, they get close. Obviously eventually it turns into more. It's not a spoiler, it's a romance book. You guys know I love Elsie Silver, so I knew I was gonna love this book. However, some of the dialogue felt really cringe, and there was a lot of moments where Skylar is famous, so a lot of her life people have been doing things for her, but there are some things in life that you just like, you know how to do. You would be able to figure out by yourself, and it kind of felt like we were stretching how much she wouldn't know. It was making her seem like dumb in a way where like she's not dumb. She just like is rich, and like she's had people doing things to her whole life, so she has to figure it out. It also felt kind of insta-lovey. Like West and Skylar meet literally in the first chapter, I think. So for me, it just felt like they saw each other and they liked each other, and I don't really like that. I'd rather there be some like build up. A quote that really sums up this book: there's a man who will do everything for you, and then there's a man who is secure enough to realize there are things you need to do for yourself, who steps back and revels in watching you soar. That's the man who's your biggest fan. The last book my friends picked for me for that video was My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing, and I was really excited for this one because it's a thriller. The main character in this book, the narrator, is an unnamed father, which I didn't even realize that we never learn his name, but he has 2 kids and a wife, Millicent. Him and his wife are serial killers. Both the husband and Millicent start keeping secrets from each other, which obviously isn't good when you're serial killers together. For this one, the premise of the book sounded so interesting, like being told from the point of view of a serial killer, but it just didn't feel thrilling. Like this book should not have been classified as a thriller. I was really bored actually. It was a lot more about like day-to-day life. There was a few plot twists between the 50 and 80% mark, but other than that, nothing really surprised me. Because I didn't really enjoy this book, I don't have any quotes that I particularly liked, but here's the vibe. At this point in the year, I started to get in an audiobook phase, which I'm still in. So I listened to Regretting You by Colleen Hoover, and the movie, I found out, is actually coming out this year, October 24th, so I guess I read it at the perfect time. The book is told from the point of view of Morgan and Clara. So Morgan is the mother and Clara is the daughter. In the beginning of the book, Morgan's husband and Clara's father, Chris, gets in an accident and passes away. We see the two characters dealing a lot with grief. At the same time, in Clara's point of view, she meets this boy named Miller Adams, but her mom, Morgan, kind of sees him as a bad boy. That causes a point of tension between them. There's a lot of points of tension between them. So the book is a lot about the mother-daughter relationship. I really loved this as an audiobook, so if you're gonna read this, I'd recommend trying the audiobook. The mother-daughter relationship also felt really, really authentic. Although frustrating at some times, I felt like that was realistic. Some of the stuff between Clara and Miller I felt like was cringy, but at the same time, it's like they're young, they're gonna do cringy things, like this is their first time falling in love. I didn't have any quotes highlighted, but here's the vibes I was getting. Definitely read the book before the movie comes out later this year. Wild Side by Elsie Silver. In this one, Tabitha, she's the female main character. Everyone calls her Tabby though. Her older sister Erica passes away and she blames it on Reese, who's the male main character, because he was Erica's landlord, and Tabby thinks that Reese evicted her, which led Erica to become involved in drugs, which caused her to pass away. Erica had a son, Milo, who Tabby now has to take care of, but turns out Reese also has to take care of him. Despite them basically hating each other, they have to come together and oversee that because of Milo. Reese is also a professional wrestler, but nobody knows that about him. This whole wrestling side plot kind of adds a new layer to Elsie's books. You know, she does the classic country romance, but the wrestling kind of added a whole new aspect, which I really enjoyed. I also really loved that there was a kid involved in the story, but it wasn't single parent trope, so I just felt like it was really creative on Elsie's part. A quote for this book is, "I spent a lifetime thinking I don't like talking. It turns out I just needed the right person to talk to." This lighting is actually getting worse by the second, so I'm gonna try and fix it. Oh, we're gonna go with this right now. The next book I read was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and I actually had to read this for a class, so I had very low expectations. You guys know books that are assigned through school sometimes are rough. I really loved this book. Mika Moon, the main character, she's one of the very few witches that there are in England, and the witches aren't allowed to speak to each other or interact, so basically she's very lonely. But they do have meetings, I want to say once every few months, where they get to like regroup and talk about things. Mika has a YouTube channel. She pretends to be a witch, and in her head she's like, no one will be able to figure out that I'm actually a witch until someone does. She gets an invitation to this place called Nowhere House to teach 3 young witches how to control their magic, and that's all I'm gonna say about the plot. But this book has a found family aspect that I loved. It was so heartwarming and loving, just really cute. I read it while I was on vacation on the beach, so kind of a weird setting for this book because it's giving fall vibes. There was, however, a side plot of romance that I felt was rushed, and all of a sudden, like towards the end, there's this spicy scene, and I felt like it was out of place because the book isn't classified as YA, but it kind of gives YA vibes the whole time, and then all of a sudden there's this spicy scene, so I was like, whoa. But like I said, the whole book gives fall vibes, so if you're gonna read this, I'd recommend reading it during the fall time. A quote that I don't think summarizes the book but really stuck with me: "Niceness is all about what we do when other people are looking. Kindness, on the other hand, runs deep. Kindness is what happens when no one's looking." Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I know, I finally read it. I think I read Fourth Wing almost a year ago. With the release of Onyx Storm, I was like, I gotta read it. Mostly read it on my Kindle, but then I also listened to the audiobook for some of it. And I don't want to say too much about the plot just because if you haven't read Fourth Wing, the plot of Onyx Storm definitely gives away, the plot of Iron Flame definitely gives away a lot. Violet's in her second year at Vizgaya. She's in her second year now and shit happens. I will say the ending was crazy. I did not expect what was happening, and now I like need to read Onyx Storm. Like, I need air. Like, I just need to know what's gonna happen next. And also Xaden is just the most perfect man I've ever read about in a book. Like, I don't have words for him. This book does not need a quote to emphasize how good it is, but one I liked is, "I wake up starving for you, only you. Even on the mornings you're halfway across the kingdom. This isn't me denying you or manipulating you. This is me fighting for you." Next, I filmed a video with my roommate. I think it's the video right before this one, so go check it out. But she picked 3 books for me to read. So the first book she picked was Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This was my first Lucy Score book and I loved it. I listened to it as an audiobook. It's the first book in the Knock 'Em Out series. The book starts with the female main character Naomi running away from her wedding, and she goes to Knock 'Em Out, which is the name of the town, to save her sister. Her sister Tina, I think is her name, yeah, says like she needs help basically. So Naomi goes there to help her. She leaves her wedding, leaves the guy at the altar. But when Naomi gets there, her sister Tina, who's kind of like the evil twin sister, takes her car, takes her money, and leaves Naomi with no job, no house, and her niece Waylay, who she didn't even know existed, naturally. The male main character is Knox. He's a resident of Knock 'Em Out. He lives there, and he meets Naomi right in the beginning of the book. He accidentally thinks that she's Tina. Knox doesn't do relationships, but he's just helping out Naomi, you know, till she gets on her feet. I will say there were a lot of spicy scenes in this book, and I don't hate having spicy scenes in a book, it's fine, but it felt like every time a sweet moment was finally happening between them, it had to be followed by a spicy scene, which kind of undermined like the sweet, sappy, cute moments, you know? Also, while this book is a romance, it had some like darker twists at the end, which I really liked. I found really interesting and very different for a romance book. A quote that really does this book justice is, "Why don't you ever fucking listen?" he grumbled, lips moving against my hair. "Because sometimes people don't know how to ask for what they really need. You needed a hug." "No, I didn't," he rasped. He was quiet for a long moment, and I listened to his heartbeat. "I needed you." The second book that my roommate Fran picked for me in that video is Drive by Kate Stewart. I DNF'd it. I'm not even gonna try and explain the plot because I don't remember a single thing. The main character's name was Stella, and it was a lot about music. That's all I remember. And I listened to like 40% of the book, so I was just really bored, and I was listening to it as an audiobook, but I was like spacing out all the time and not paying attention to what was happening, and I just feel like if I liked the book, I would have been paying attention. No quote for this one, but here's the best I could do with a mood board for the book from what I do remember. The last book Fran picked for me in that video was The Infinity Between Us by N.S. Perkins. I also listened to this as an audiobook, and I listened to it when I was driving from home to school, which is only about a 2.5 hour drive, but in that drive I listened to 50% of the book. Violet and Will have been spending their summers together in Maine for their whole lives. Will's dad and Violet's mom were best friends growing up. They're still best friends. They work together, so every summer their 2 families come together in Maine. But something happened 5 years ago that made Violet and Will stop talking to each other. So it's told in past and present timelines. In the past, it's that last summer they spent together, and in the present, Violet goes back to the beach house because she wants to sell it. She doesn't know this, but Will is also there, and when she gets there, Will is like, "Give me the summer to show you why you love this place and this house so much, and if you still want to sell it at the end of the summer, we'll sell it." She wants to sell it so bad, so she's like, "Let me just put up with him for the summer and we'll sell it at the end like I want." The book reminded me a lot of Love in Other Words and Every Summer After. For me, the reason that Violet and Will stopped talking didn't really satisfy me. I felt like it was really predictable the whole book. It was like a huge reason, but it didn't catch me off guard. And for me, Love in Other Words just holds a really special place in my heart. It's like one of my 6-star reads. So this one didn't hit for me, but I still really loved it. It was great summer vibes. If you're looking for a book in the summer to read on the beach or on vacation, I definitely recommend this. A quote that I think perfectly shows the vibes of this book: "It's easy to not realize how much you miss something when it's been so long. You don't even remember how it used to be." Lastly, we have the most recent book I've read, which is Do Not Disturb by Freida McFadden. Also listened to this as an audiobook. As you can tell, I'm on the audiobook wave. In this book, right in the beginning, Quinn, the main character, kills her husband out of self-defense, but she runs because everyone in the community loves her husband and she thinks no one will believe her that it was self-defense. So she goes on the run and she ends up at the Baxter Motel, which is owned by Nick Baxter and his wife Rosalie. She decides to stay there for the night, but she's like, "I'm only gonna stay here for one night and then I'm back on the run in the morning." But a snowstorm happens and she's not able to leave the next day. The owner of the motel, Nick, helps her try and like dig out her car so she can leave, and the whole time his wife Rosalie, who's sick with MS, is watching them and everything that's happening at the motel from her bedroom window in their house. And then also while this is happening, back at home, Quinn's sister Claudia is looking for her. We get a lot of point of views in this book: Quinn, Nick, Rosalie, and Claudia. But it's not like an every other chapter type thing. It's like there's a whole part in Quinn's point of view, there's a part in Nick's, Rosalie's, and then Claudia's. As an audiobook, I really liked this book. I will say this wasn't my favorite of Freida's books. I said this about The Crash too, but I just feel like Never Lie and The Boyfriend I loved, and then The Crash and this one, Do Not Disturb, weren't my favorite. The ending was predictable, and I just felt like the breadcrumbs left throughout the book were a little bit too obvious about how it was gonna end. It was still an enjoyable read though, don't get me wrong, and if you like fast-paced thrillers, definitely give it a try. Those are the 22 books I've read so far this year. If you've read any of them, comment down below because I'd love to talk to you guys about them. Also, let me know if you have any recommendations for future books based on these books that I've liked. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those fun things before you leave, and thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.